But yeah, I'm sitting Dak this week. This is like an easy call. Green Bay is the second toughest defense by passing fantasy points per drop back. And I mean, dude, Micah Parsons is going to want to be in that backfield as many times as he can to kind of stick it to Jerry and the Cowboys. Yeah, Dak is no-go this week. I think, honestly, I'd be kind of afraid to even use him in like a super flex league this week. That's how low I am.
That's hardcore. That's hardcore, Graham. Benching Dak in super flex. That is hardcore. Just shows you just Graham's level of commitment to this sit here.
What? Why are you shaking your head? You're welcome.
Fantasy football week 4 starts, sits, and flex options. Theo Greminger, Fantasy Football Daily, joined by Graham Barfield here each and every week. Graham, last week we saw like a number of big breakout performances. Certainly Cam Scattaboo, huge breakout for him. Omarion Hampton took a huge step forward. Now Najee Harris is out for the season. We also saw Luther Burden, big breakout performance for him. Another rookie who's a little bit under the radar is Matthew Golden. Matthew Golden, in the first game without Jaden Reed, he ends up catching 4 passes, catches all 4 of his targets in a low-scoring game, finishes with 4 catches for 52 receiving yards. One of the receptions looked like he sort of misread it, and he had room to run down the sideline, sort of went out of bounds against a difficult Cleveland Browns defense. Is this a trend? Is Matthew Golden trending up? And should fantasy managers consider starting Matthew Golden here in week 4?
Oh, yeah, I'm feeling it. I'm really feeling it in this spot. Dallas is just getting absolutely shredded, Theo, by deep, basically by everything, but especially by deep passes, which is just like yin and yang for Jordan Love. I mean, Jordan Love is one of the most aggressive quarterbacks in the league, maybe the most aggressive quarterback we have right now, at least by average depth of target, throwing down the field. Cowboys have given up 444 yards on passes over 20 yards in the air. The next worst defense, Theo, is the Patriots at 230 yards. So basically 200 more yards than the next worst team. And yeah, man, with Golden specifically, I think we all kind of expected, this is the Packers we're talking about. Their receiver room is always kind of a little muddled. They're always kind of rotating. But the Jaden Reed injury it really opened up things for all of these guys, but specifically Golden. His route share has come up from 44% in week 1 up to 71% last week. He got 83% of the team's air yards last week as well. So if there's a huge play potential in this game, it is with Matthew Golden. I think he's a really good, like, high upside flex this week. And if the Cowboys can just push the Packers a little bit, which I know is going to be kind of hard with no CeeDee Lamb, right? Like, Cowboys really could take a big step back. But, Jordan Love has only thrown it 22, 31, and 25 times through 3 games. If he can get into like the 28-30 range, I think Golden has like a really, really big ceiling week this week. I think I said last week on matchup points with John and Brett that he's a really good buy low, and I still feel the same way. I think he's a pretty good buy low.
Yeah, Matthew Golden, we've sort of been waiting for this, and I'm with you. I think this is the week we want to start all of our streaming quarterbacks against Dallas. We want to start wide receivers in the flex against Dallas. We look back to week 2 where Wan'Dale Robinson was the wide receiver 5 on the week with 28 points. The same week that Malik Neighbors just ripped everyone to shreds and finished as the wide receiver 1. Then last week in week 3, Caleb Williams with 4 passing touchdowns against Dallas. This defense is just ridiculously bad. Can Dallas push them enough? I think so. I think it's at least in Dallas's MO that they're going to take shots. They're not going to be able to run the ball particularly well against them. I mean, I think that they're going to have to at least try to push the pace. It's not going to be a dogfight like Cleveland was able to beat Green Bay. You also have Green Bay coming off of a loss, which is, I think, really important to see sort of the MO of this team. They lose a game that they could have won. They could have pushed it to 3-0. Now they have an opportunity against a sort of a beat-up Dallas Cowboys team to get things right, get to 3-1. I'm with you. I think Matthew Golden is a really, really fun start this week and an explosive player where, Graham, he could end up with 4 catches again, but all he's got to do is house one of those, and all of a sudden you have a guy who puts up a really decent starting number. Another wide receiver that you have in flex consideration this week, fantasy managers are not really going to want to hear about it, and it's Keon Coleman, who gave us the really big week 1 performance. And then after that, it's been sort of rough sledding. Last week, I used him in a lineup against the Miami Dolphins. That obviously didn't work out. 5 points in week 3, 5.6 in week 2. Little bit of frustration for Keon Coleman managers, but you have some faith in him returning value this week in week 4.
Sure, it's two things. It's first of all, the Bills are like the best implied team total this week by a landslide. I mean, they're playing the Saints at home. They're implied to score 32.5 points, man. The next closest team is actually the Packers at 27.3. So it's just like a huge team expectation. It's secondarily, like the Saints are getting kind of sneakily flamed by outside wide receivers, at least through their first 3 games. They're giving up 24.9 half PPR points per game to outside wide receivers. That's third most. Only Dallas and Jacksonville are worse right now. Yeah, I mean, this is what Keon Coleman is. He's a boomer bust play. He's a much better play. Like every fantasy player, every single fantasy receiver, I should say, is better in best ball. I think that's like a total misnomer. But Keon Coleman, like, really is kind of that guy, right? Like, he's going to have some huge spike weeks mixed in with the 5-6 point games, like you were saying. I'm looking at this as like a big spiked week. Bills have such a good team outlook. Allen might only need to throw it 25, 26, 27 times to kind of put the Saints aside. But I think when he is throwing, there's a chance here Coleman could get loose. He's kind of in that same vein with Golden this week, just a boomer bust wide receiver 3, but definitely has some ceiling potential in this matchup.
Yeah, he's definitely an interesting one. And I think that if you're into him, it makes sense to maybe use him in DFS because no one's going to possibly have him there in their lineups after the back-to-back 5-pointers. Talk about the other Buffalo Bills pieces. James Cook is obviously in everyone's starting lineup each and every week. He is putting up a potential RB1 overall season. Dalton Kincaid, do you have any faith in him this week? I mean, he's another player sort of on that on the fringe of being a tight end 1 this week in most rankings, including ours. And then Khalil Shakir, who of course found the end zone against Miami. But like you said, the advantage has been to the outside receivers. Are you using other Bills weapons this week as well?
Yeah, Kincaid is always tricky to me. Like, I think he's one of these guys you're just kind of always going to get wrong. Like, you're going to bench him and he's going to score a touchdown, or you're going to play him and he doesn't really do much for you. The problem with him, man, is it's been the same thing for 3 years now. He's just not playing enough. Like, in terms of just getting onto the field, he's still running a 57% route share. That's like tight end 20 levels of participation. The good news is, though, man, like, he easily leads this team in targets per route run. So when he's out there, he is getting the ball. I think it's kind of like seeing the forest through the trees with him. Like, he is just going to be the tight end 11, tight end 12, tight end 13 all year. Yeah, I mean, last week was a really good matchup against Miami. This week, less so, but I think he's just right in there in that fringe. And kind of the same thing with Shakir, dude. Like, I've never been like, I was not a Shakir guy at all this year. I thought he was just like massively overpriced. And I still feel, kind of the same way, a little more down on him with Coleman taking a step forward, Kincaid getting all these targets. I mean, he's a boring wide receiver 3, better in PPR leagues. I want no part of Shakir in like half or standard leagues or anything like that.
Yeah, no doubt about that. One wide receiver that I'm excited that we actually get a chance to talk about, Jordan Addison was terrific last year and, of course, suffered a suspension where he missed the first 3 weeks of the season. Last week, we had a little bit of positivity. The Vikings completely steamrolled the Cincinnati Bengals, and Carson Wentz looked fine. He had 2 passing touchdowns. Now Minnesota plays Pittsburgh. The game is in Europe. This is one of those weird 9:30 in the morning ones. Remember to wake up, set your lineups, or set them the night before. But Jordan Addison last year, towards the end of the season, he was one of the players we circled as a league winner because of his impact on the fantasy football playoffs, and just was tremendous. Big-time explosive player. He's run really red hot in his first 2 seasons as a pro on touchdown scoring and spike weeks. Are you looking to put Addison into your starting lineup? And what are your expectations for him in his debut game of the 2025 season?
So, yeah, like you said, suspended, not going to be limited obviously not coming off an injury. He should run a relatively like full-time route share. At least that's what we're projecting. I think he's a really strong wide receiver 3. I mean, this has been kind of like a repeat of last year, man, where we've had a number of receiver injuries and like the running backs are just running so hot again. Like outside of James Conner, like we've just had, pretty much pure run for the running backs. You look at our week 4 projections over on Fantasy Points. 15 running backs in our top 18 and only 3 receivers. And I think this is kind of going to be par for the course again for the rest of the season. Is like you're going to be sorting through these guys like, Addison, Golden, Keon Coleman in your lineups every single week. And like, there's just going to be some down weeks for sure. I think Addison like probably plays full-time-ish. Like you said, last year, he was awesome. Jefferson led this team in target share at 25%, but Addison was at 20%. Hockenson was at 16%. And by fantasy points per game, just strictly by their production, Addison was the wide receiver 17 in those games. Jefferson was the wide receiver 9. I'm not expecting that this week, obviously, with Carson Wentz under center. This game could be kind of slow and boring. Vikings have been a little more run heavy. Obviously, the Steelers play slow. I think he's a flex play. I'm not feeling as strongly as I am about Golden and Coleman as I am with Addison, but he's definitely like in the wide receiver 3 conversation because, dude, I mean, receivers just gotten cleaned out again. Like it's kind of brutal.
Yeah, receivers gotten cleaned out. And when it comes to Addison, I'm always going to kind of lean towards wanting to start Addison because there's a lot of these guys that you talk about, Graham, that are on our flex radar where we're never really excited to talk about whether to start them. A guy like a Khalil Shakir is a perfect example where it's like, hey, I'll start him and maybe I'll end up with like 13 points. With Jordan Addison, we have this sample size of him putting up massive scoring weeks. Last year in week 12, he put up a 30-point week. He was the wide receiver 1 on the week. And in week 14, he had a 39-point performance. Like Jordan Addison has been fantastic as a pro. We talk about the touchdown scoring, and people sometimes hate hearing about that. A lot of fantasy analysts will say it's just sort of unsustainable. Touchdowns are the last thing we want to chase. But Addison has 32 regular season games, and he's had receiving touchdowns. He's had 19 of them in that time period. Really, really strong sample size for a player like him. He's got the size. He's got the speed. He's got the pedigree. Addison was a first-round pick, and I'm really excited to see him. I'm going to be using him in a number of lineups this week with excitement. You can't really say confidence yet. Sometimes guys need a little bit of a ramp up, but I'm very excited to get him back on my fantasy teams. And fantasy managers who started out the year 3-0 or 2-1 with Jordan Addison, this could be a potential flex hammer for you moving forward. Make sure you're tuning in for my guest show this week. I had Ryan Heath and Jacob Gibbs on. Make sure you're tuning in for the waiver wire show I'm dropping with Joe Dolan and Tom Brawley. And then my solo show I'm dropping every Monday, breaking down everything you need to know from the previous week and taking a look at some of the breaking news you need to know to crush the following weeks. If you want to level your fantasy game up, consider a subscription to Fantasy Points. You're going to have access to all of our weekly projections, all of our unbelievable articles, all of our tools, and you can use the code Theo and get 15% off any Fantasy Points package, including Fantasy Points data, where Graham, you're using Fantasy Points data with all of your research. Scott Barrett is, I am. It is the best source for anything analytics or statistics wise in fantasy, bar none. Fantasy Points data, use the code Theo. Let's talk about the Bengals. Bengals are disgusting. We were certainly last week a little optimistic. I used Jake Browning in a few lineups. I had to take the L. My waiver wire article have been done very well this year with, we ran pretty pure with it. And then last week I was pretty excited to add Jake Browning. We talked about his experience in the system. We talked about Jake Browning, how he had the 5 QB1 finishes in 2023, and it completely unraveled. Minnesota completely took the Bengals behind the woodshed. Jamar Chase, you're starting him. There's nothing really to talk about here. But are you considering benching Chase Brown and T. Higgins, both of them coming off of dud performances? Not a whole lot of positive things to say right now about Cincinnati, other than it gets a little bit easier to an extent. Denver's defense on paper is better. But Denver's defense, they haven't been quite as dominant yet this season. We saw Indianapolis put points up against them. We saw the Chargers be able to come back. So I'm looking for a silver lining here, Graham. Where are you at on these two guys?
I almost put, and maybe I should put a new section in my article, my Start Sit article, where it's like you're just drinking bleach, and that's kind of where I'm at with T. Higgins and Chase Brown. You're just drinking bleach with these guys, like especially Chase Brown. I think with Higgins, it's just like, yeah, he's still super talented. They'll get this passing offense figured out. Like they're going to be pretty pass heavy. They're going to have to be, right, because this defense is so bad. It's for all the reasons we lined up all year with them. With Chase Brown, though, man, it's like scary hours, like real scary hours. Obviously, the efficiency has been terrible. Last week, he lost snaps, too. He was down at 56% of the snaps. Obviously, they just got boat raced by the Vikings. But, he lost carries as well. And I think this will continue. I think as long as he continues to be this inefficient, they're going to want to take a look at Taj Brooks just to see what they have there, especially with this kind of trending towards a dead season for the Bengals. The only thing that you can hang your hat on is the volume with Chase Brown at this point, and I think that's a sketchy bet as well. Last week was a really good matchup. Vikings had kind of struggled against the run to start the season. The Broncos have also kind of struggled against the run. That's like their one, kind of issue area on defense. Last year was the same thing with the Broncos. Their run defense was just kind of meh. Same thing, but dude, I mean, terrible team outlook on the road. Browning is going to get blitzed a ton. Like I think this is a spot where you sit Chase Brown. I still have T. Higgins as a flex play just because of his, weekly ceiling is still really high. He only needs like 3 or 4 targets to really get there. They'll get the passing offense figured out. I feel pretty good about that, but I think the run game is it's over. Like it's over for this run game here.
Yeah, so let's put a little bit of a litmus test here. Would you rather start Chase Brown against Denver or Chuba Hubbard against the Patriots?
Oh, Hubbard all day.
Would you rather start Chase Brown or Tony Pollard against the Texans?
Pollard.
Okay, so we're gonna go a little bit lower. Okay, yeah. Alvin Kamara, who's not getting targets out of the backfield against the Buffalo Bills, a very difficult matchup, or Chase Brown.
I'm still going Kamara too. I'm pretty much out on Chase Brown. It pains me because I don't know. I think he would have been all right if Burrow were the quarterback because they would have just way more red zone opportunities, way more goal line opportunities. Now you're just taking the top 5 scoring offense to like 17th or 18th, maybe at best. Plus he's losing snaps, man. It's not good. I'm going to continue to just like, I think you and I were talking before the show. I think I'm going to bump him down even more in our rest of season rankings. Like the more I'm talking about this, the more I'm like completely scared off of this guy.
Yeah, and next week we're going to do a Fantasy Football Daily, a big one where Graham and I are going to be joined by some other Fantasy Points guests, and we're going to reveal our rest of season rankings. A great source for anyone looking to make trades in their leagues. We're going really hard on this one. It's going to be a really, really beneficial one for you to listen to. Not sure what day of the week. Make sure you are subscribed to Fantasy Football Daily anywhere you get your podcasts. And make sure you're also subscribed to Fantasy Points YouTube. It'll drop on there as well. I got to find a running back you would bench over Chase Brown, though. Let me go a little deeper. Nick Chubb of the Houston Texans.
Okay, yeah, that's where I draw. Okay. That's where I draw the line. Woody Marks is going to play a little more too. That's where I'll.
Okay, so we found like the line, and basically based on that, you're treating Chase Brown as a mid RB3. What a difference a month makes. Where Chase Brown was a player we were projecting to be a RB1. There is a chance, I talked about this with Scott Barrett, that Chase Brown is just a one-year wonder in fantasy football. Everything ran his way last year, but you nailed it. All these people are making a lot of excuses for Chase Brown, the quality of the offense, the situation, and I'm sure there's going to be some people hating me that I'm saying this in the YouTube comments, but when it comes to Chase Brown, we're talking about a guy who ran completely pure to end last season, had every touch opportunity. There was no running back competition whatsoever. And to his credit, he had some unbelievably good weeks, but his profile, talking about a day 3 player who did absolutely not a whole lot as a rookie. His sample size of production as a rookie was really like 2 or 3 games, and then had this incredible second half of last season. There's a chance that Chase Brown doesn't even finish as an RB2. The situation is that bad in the running game for Cincinnati. I hope I'm wrong because I have some Chase Brown exposure, but we've seen guys go from way up here to down here in fantasy. Not every year, but we see it at the running back position more so than others, where guys really, really crater off even after some high-end production. So hoping it's not completely the case, but we're sort of right there. A player that is really tilting for fantasy managers to talk about is TreVeyon Henderson. Henderson was a player that steamed up to like the 2-3 turn in FFPC main events in the final few days. There was collective enthusiasm for fantasy managers heading into the season that TreVeyon Henderson would be this instant star. It's been anything but that. It's been very frustrating not only to see Ramondre Stevenson get the majority of the touches, but New England also working in Antonio Gibson. This week, Ramondre Stevenson is coming off of a rough one with multiple fumbles. When we talk about Ramondre Stevenson, it's a player who lost a bunch of fumbles last year as well. This is a trend for Stevenson. Is this the window of opportunity that TreVeyon Henderson needs to make an impact for fantasy managers?
That's exactly what I'm thinking. This is now 2-3 years running where Stevenson has just not been able to hold on to the football. And we saw it last week. The coaching staff immediately gave Henderson a much larger role than he had in weeks 1 and 2. Henderson had 48% of the snaps, led this backfield in carries with 11. Stevenson had 7. Gibson had 4. And like you said, I think this is his chance to kind of make himself the 1A, at least to Stevenson or Gibson's 1B in this backfield. I kind of viewed it the other way, actually, going into the season. This is kind of what I figured. Like, I figured Stevenson would kind of get the dirty work carries up the middle. What I did not expect, though, is him to get a lot more passing down work. Maybe this is just one of those things where, he's a rookie. We've seen this before. How many times with rookies, these guys start really slow. I think I mentioned to you this a couple weeks ago, but like Jahmyr Gibbs only played 40% of the snaps to start his first 3-4 games as a Lion. Then obviously he took off in the back half of his rookie year. It's kind of the same thing I'm viewing with Henderson. I think he's still a really good buy low. And in this spot specifically, Theo, like, Panthers are a terrible run defense once again. Does not matter that Derek Brown's back. Like, they're so bad. 3rd most yards per carry allowed. 5.1. This is the spot. This is the spot we go back to Henderson. I've had him listed as a sit to start this year in my article. I have him as a flex play this week. My confidence level is like a 5 out of 10. It's not very good, but I do think he's going to continue to get more and more work as the season goes on.
Yeah, we have to look back at week 1, the Jacksonville game, where Travis Etienne completely ripped Carolina apart as a runner. That game sort of stands out a little bit to me, where you're right. If there's going to be a defense that would be, and I thought TreVeyon Henderson last week with Pittsburgh was going to be the one where he would get his breakout potentially. But I think this week we're circling it. And it's a lot of times with these rookies, it takes them a little while. We saw last week Omarion Hampton, Quinshon Judkins, Cam Scatteraboo was week 2 and then took it another step forward in week 3. I think TreVeyon Henderson this week, and he might never look back, because if you can just carve out a significant snap share, doesn't have to be a dominant snap share. He's a player that can really, really thrive on these high value touches. He's very, very explosive. So I'm really, really betting on this one, and I'm going to be using him in a few lineups as well. Really, really fun one to talk about. Let's talk about Calvin Ridley, another super, super frustrating player for fantasy managers. I talked about him this past offseason potentially being this year's Terry McLaurin, being this year's Cortland Sutton. It's been so far from that. Ridley is, in my opinion, completely unusable in fantasy, whereas Elic Iamaner is trending up, the rookie wide receiver, the day 3 selection. Chikakonkwo, I'd even kind of feel okay about if I'm in a complete jam and tight end premium using, but I want no part of Calvin Ridley. Am I wrong on this one?
No, you were right last week too. You were kind of saying, man, this is starting to look a little scarier with Ridley, and it continued to be that way, even in a pretty good matchup. We'll see if the Texans get Derek Stingley this week. He's dealing with an oblique injury, but if Stingley plays, like, it's full on sit Calvin Ridley. And honestly, even if Stingley doesn't play, I'm probably not going to be playing Ridley anyway. In the rest of season rankings, I actually have Ridley and Iamaner back to back. 49 for Ridley at receiver 49, wide receiver 50 for Iamaner. I'm viewing this as like, I think at some point we might be viewing Iamaner as their clear number 1 wide receiver. So through 3 games so far, Ridley has 20 targets, Iamaner has 18. Ironman's been, more productive, slightly more productive just because of the touchdowns. They kind of win in the same parts of the field, downfield. But the thing is, like, Ridley's separation metrics are terrible now. This is a guy who always kind of had that quick twitchiness in and out of his breaks, and that just kind of seems like it's falling by the wayside a little bit. By our average separation score metrics, Ridley's like well below Ironman. He's probably I think he's worse on the team right now. It's not looking good. And then, there's the whole, Cam Ward making his, fourth start of his career type thing. I am very scared of the Titans this week. I'm going to put Tony Pollard as a flex play. Just like hope that he falls into the end zone again, just gets all this volume and hope he falls into the end zone. But yeah, I'm pretty much fully out on the Titans in this spot going into Houston against a really good front seven.
Yeah, and going up against an 0-3 Houston Texans,
yeah, they're desperate, dude.
The Texans really want to put it on them. Texans have their own issues, tons of issues offensively, but I don't really feel comfortable using any Tennessee Titan. Tony Pollard would certainly be the one, but like us telling you that we want you to sit Calvin Ridley this week, there'll be weeks to use Elic Iamaner, but he's also a sit this week. Of course, the guy could catch a touchdown pass. They're gonna be trailing, but I would not be comfortable using really any Tennessee Titan, even Tony Pollard this week. Yeah, really, really tough one. I think Houston is a strong play. If you're a gambler, this might also be a strong play too. That's not what this podcast is about, but we're giving out free winners whenever we can. All right, Graham, let's talk QB. Let's talk about Justin Fields. Justin Fields missed last week. What's your enthusiasm level for him this week? Is he a player that you want to get into your lineup? Is he a player that you want to sit on the bench and take a look at? What's your enthusiasm level for Fields? Fields, again, was fantastic in week 1. So we've already seen him play very well in this offense. How about in week 4?
Yeah, I think if he plays, he's not must start, but he's one of the best quarterback plays on this week, right? It's like premier matchup against Miami. We're going to be wanting to play quarterbacks against Miami every single week. It's not to the level of Dallas or Chicago, Theo, but it's still like it's nice, man. By passing fantasy points per drop back allowed, so that's not even talking about the rushing, just strictly passing. Cowboys, Bears are the worst teams in the NFL by passing fantasy points per drop back allowed. Miami's the third worst team. This kind of starts a really nice run for Fields, by the way. Like, he gets Dallas in week 5, then the Broncos week 6, okay. But then week 7 and week 8, he gets Carolina and Cincinnati. So you're looking at like 4 of the next 5 matchups are like against probably bottom 5, maybe, bottom 8 defenses. I don't think Tyrod Taylor really did anything for the Jets last week to kind of put his hat in that ring of like, maybe he should be the starter here. He looked pretty brutal on that pick 6. He did, kind of get them back in the game, but he made some pretty bad throws last week. To me, this is clearly Fields' job. Obviously, he's got the rushing upside plus all these great matchups before the bye. I'm trying to buy some Justin Fields.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Justin Fields, if he starts, you're using him. My question to you would be, if he misses the game, what's your enthusiasm level for Taylor, especially for super flex managers?
He would be a really good stream. I think I like Geno Smith a little bit more. Gets Chicago this week for streaming decisions. But yeah, he would be probably the second best. If we get Marcus Mariota again, then Mariota would be in that mix as well. But it seems like Jane Daniels is trending up to play this week. So yeah, I think Tyrod would be the second best streamer on the slate for sure.
Yeah, Geno, we talked about him on the waiver wire show, and I wrote up Geno in my waiver wire article available over on Fantasy Points, where Geno, we had that really strong week 1 where he gets the road win in New England, then sort of a dismal week 2 where he throws an interception on the very first offensive possession of the game for the Raiders. And then in a losing effort, he was fantastic against Washington. 3 passing touchdowns, 0 interceptions. You've got Trey Tucker coming on. Geno's interesting to me because I think this week against Chicago, he's probably somewhere in the low-end QB1 category, at least a high-end QB2. I think he should be rostered, and I think he's going to end up being sort of a matchup-based streamer for us for the rest of the season, and that's perfectly fine. If you're in the streaming game, having Geno with another quarterback, I think you could play it that way. Guys like Jared Goff, where the splits are for Goff, where it's a indoor environment. he's going to do much better. Maybe combining him with a Geno, maybe a player where you just have a little bit less confidence in. Another player who I want to pick your brain on, certainly not on our show sheet, but I talked about him with Scott Barrett. I talked about him with Joe Dolan and Tom Brawley. I'm super excited about Jaxson Dart, getting a chance to see him on an NFL field. I don't think he's necessarily in the starting conversation this week against the Chargers, but I think maybe a week or two from now, Graham, we're going to start talking about him as a potential streamer.
I agree. And it's a twofold thing. Like, he's got this kind of like sneaky mobility.
Yes.
Brett Whitefield, when I was talking to him about Dart, I was like, what's Dart's ceiling, man? Like, tell me what you think his like absolute ceiling would be. He was basically saying like a little more mobile Baker Mayfield, and Mayfield is like already pretty mobile. Yeah, though this week, no go. Rookies making their first start are always a fade for me. At least by the passing yardage prop market, starts at like sub 200. He's at like 193.5 in terms of the passing yards. It's against a veteran coach like Harbaugh, probably not the week. But yeah, I'm with you, dude. I told everybody in my Superflex strategy guide this year to draft Jaxson Dart, sit on him for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, however long it takes, and then you're going to get a really good QB2 for the rest of the season. And I still feel the same way about that. I think he'll probably be a pretty good streamer to open up this year, but I'm open-minded, because of his rushing ability, that he could be like a low-end QB1 for us by, week 9, week 10.
The situation could be like Drake May was last year.
Yep.
If you gave Drake May Malik Neighbors.
Yep.
So like May had nothing at the receiver position. May was sort of running for his life, but it's that when a quarterback has mobility and they're a willing runner, and you have a coach with a history of utilizing a quarterback like him, like Daniel Jones had 700 rushing yards for Brian Daboll in his first season back in 2022. And Jaxson Dart, people don't necessarily talk about the rushing with him, but he had nearly 1,500 rushing yards in 3 years at Ole Miss, 12 rushing touchdowns. He also has a number of collegiate starts. He had 41 collegiate starts. I think Dart is going to fly up the dynasty rankings, and I think he's going to end up saving Brian Daboll's job, for better or for worse. Giants fans, you're going to get another year of Daboll, because Dart's going to flash enough this year that they're going to say, well, let's give Brian Daboll 2 years with Jaxson Dart, see if he can get it done. Go for it.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. Like, it's not I loved your May comp, because that's kind of the way I wrote it up as well, like this offseason. But it's not just like he has Malik Neighbors. He's also got a much better. I think Andrew Thomas is one of the best left tackles in football. Like, he's got a pretty good offensive environment. Like, Daboll's definitely been a little overrated. But man, yeah, I mean, Dart got better every year in college too.
Yeah.
Like, his per dropback efficiency got better every single year. I think there's definitely some upside here for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So stash Jaxson Dart, and he gets New Orleans right around the corner. That could be the week where Jaxson Dart puts up like a top 10 number at the quarterback position. Talk about Bo Nix. Last week, Denver lost a disappointing game. They were leading LA. LA comes back and wins that one. Bo Nix this week against the Bengals. On paper, this is a great matchup for him. Does Nix put up a big number?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, Nix, at least by our, accuracy metrics over at Fantasy Points Data, has really struggled to start this season. It kind of looks like a mirror image of the beginning of his rookie year, until it took till like week 4, week 5, and he kind of started getting dialed in. I mean, dude, he left a number of just like massive plays on the field last week. So yeah, by catchable targets, just by, strictly could prime Calvin Johnson catch this pass. Only Russell Wilson is worse right now by catchable throw rate at 68.2%. Nix is just behind him at 68.4%. His off-target throw rate is 23%. It's not looking great right now. He's got to get a lot dialed in, and this might be the spot to get right. Bengals are allowing the 7th most passing fantasy points per game. Like you mentioned, just a really good spot. And the good thing with Nix is like he's still scrambling. Like, his rushing yards per game is like right in line with his rookie season figure. So you're getting a little bit of like, higher floor just because he is, pretty mobile. But man, good spot at home against the Bengals. Like, this team total looks really good. I'm going back to Nix for one more week. For better or worse, again, confidence level is not super high, but I'm just looking at this as like a really, really good bounce back spot.
There's always a chance with Bo Nix that he can find it with his legs too, where I still believe in Bo Nix. I have him very highly rated in my dynasty quarterback rankings. We saw all those spike weeks last year. And I think Denver is going to respond well. They've had now 2 very close losses to Indianapolis and, of course, to the LA Chargers. I think they come out. I think they really, really put it on Cincinnati. And hey, last time we saw Cincinnati versus Denver, it was Bo Nix going absolutely ham with Joe Burrow going ham right across it. Maybe it becomes another fantasy-friendly environment. Shout out Marvin Mims. That was the one that sent it to overtime, and Mims went absolutely bonkers in that one. So we would love to see a repeat performance there. Let's talk about Dak Prescott, because Prescott loses CeeDee Lamb. This offense, I think, is going to try to look similar with George Pickens and Jake Ferguson sort of filling in, utilizing maybe a little more Javonte Williams and a little Miles Sanders. But the matchup is scary bad against a Green Bay defense that has just been gangbusters this year and coming off of a loss.
Yeah, it's not just the Lamb injury. They've lost some offensive linemen as well. Tyler Booker is not going to play. And, dude, against this Packers front seven, I mean, it's just like, it's scary hours. It sucks because I was pretty bullish on the Cowboys this year just because Dak was back healthy. He's looking great, by the way. I mean, Dak has played really strong, in my opinion, through the first 3 games. It's just like their defense is so bad. Like, he's just going to have to throw so many times. But yeah, I'm sitting Dak this week. This is like an easy call. Green Bay is the 2nd toughest defense by passing fantasy points per drop back. And I mean, dude, Micah Parsons is going to want to be in that backfield as many times as he can to kind of stick it to Jerry and the Cowboys. Yeah, Dak is no-go this week. I think, honestly, I'd be kind of afraid to even use him in like a super flex league this week. That's how low I am.
That's hardcore. That's hardcore, Graham. Benching Dak in Superflex, that is hardcore. Just shows you just Graham's level of commitment to this sit here. Very, very briefly, because it looks like Jaden Daniels is going to play. If Jaden Daniels does sit, though, are we using Marcus Mariota once again with confidence against Atlanta?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we saw it's the same thing he's kind of been doing his whole career. He had that design run, looked great, and then fumbled on it. He also had the goal line carry as well. He was all right, got us 20 fantasy points. We liked him as a streamer last week. I think he finished QB7, QB8. Atlanta's much better this year though. So it is a significantly tougher matchup, but I think Marcus Mariota, if he plays, he project as like a back end QB1 again.
Yeah, I'm sort of there. I still have Mariota stashed in some super flex leagues. If Daniels misses another one, he's going right back in my lineups. Graham, you crushed it as always. Make sure you are subscribed to Fantasy Points. All of Graham's work, all of my work, all of Ryan Heath, Scott Barrett, John Hansen. We're everywhere here at Fantasy Points. If you're listening to this on the podcast, do us a favor and go and subscribe to Fantasy Points YouTube. If you're watching this on Fantasy Points YouTube, subscribe to Fantasy Football Daily Podcast. Make sure you're also tuning in to School of Scott. Every week, Scott Barrett and I breaking it down, everything you need to know. That's been a really, really fun one to record. We just recorded that one last night. And Dynasty Life this week, my Dynasty podcast. Make sure you subscribe to that as well. Dwayne McFarlane is joining me. We're going to try to unpack some of these rookies. We're going to have a deep dive into this year's rookie class. We're going to see you next week. Let's crush it in week 4, and let's crush the 2025 fantasy football season.